Hello and welcome to Talk Georgia, my English podcast on the Georgian and regional politics.
The only thing we understand about Trump that we don't understand Trump. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Okay? So where we will end up?
Well, yeah, that's the most important question.
I mean, what side of the Berlin's wall we will be?
This is an issue that will affect every Georgian citizen, millions of Georgian citizens.
Bidzina thinks that he owns the country. It's like kids now who are driving school bus. So.
Hello and welcome to Talk Georgia, my English podcast on the Georgian and regional politics. To discuss the key developments that shape politics in this country and out of this country, today we'll be joined by Nodar Kharchiladze, who is founder and the director of Georgia's Strategic Analysis Center, GSAC as we call it in short. I'm one of the founders also of this organization and head of European Studies. Before starting GSAC, Nodar was senior fellow at Rondelli Foundation. Before that, he was deputy defense minister for years, deputy minister for interior. He's Turkish and US educated.
And Dutch.
Dutch
yes.
Too. Oh, right. And his expertise includes and is not limited to national security.
That sounded like a label from the legal American legal case.
National security, defense, international relations, Georgian politics.
Yeah, generally, that sums it up.
Well, Nodar, welcome to my show.
Thank you.
And before moving to the Georgian politics, let's say a few words about yesterday's ping pong between President Trump and President Zelensky, because something that is going on there affects the entire world and will definitely affect Georgian politics. President Zelensky made a very clear statement that Ukraine, under no circumstances, will make territorial concessions to Russia, and he's not going to talk about any peace deal before ceasefire is reached. I think it's obvious that things are getting more difficult, and the deal that the President Trump is talking about, that it's somewhere close, it's not that close. Do you see the light at the end of the tunnel, Nodar, here? And if you do and if you don't, how this will affect politics in the world and also Georgian politics? And also, one of the important things that we hear from President Trump and Vice President Vance recently is that, okay, if the deal doesn't work out, they'll walk out, they'll withdraw. And what does this withdrawal mean? So they will simply stop making attempts to make a peace deal, or they will withdraw and take their support to Ukraine away. How do you see that?
Well, thank you very much, George and Giorgi. Let's make it Georgian. And it's an honor and pleasure to be one of your first guests. I mean, I will tell it to my grandkids. You know that show. I was one of the first to go there. So yeah, you started with a very tough ball, first one. I mean, it's a very complicated issue. I think anybody and everybody who claimed that they understood Trump, now they say that they were wrong, because I mean the only thing we understand about Trump that we don't understand Trump. I think that's he often does some things, he often doesn't do, but absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Okay, and that works for the Trump. He wrote this famous book, which is Art of the Deal, and he's very proud about his ability to make deals. And one of his, I think, not premier, but major foreign policy promise. He made lots of internal policy promises, but major foreign policy promises. One of the big ones was to stop the war in like 1 day, or then 2 days, and then 1 week. Then it became 1 month. So, and he's very frustrated that he can't do that.
Oh yeah, there was an interesting statement from his spokesperson who said that his patience is running thin, and the guys, you'd better do the deal quick.
What, if anything, what first Trump presidency gave us, that I think we can safely assume that he has a very short attention span. He would focus on something, he would make a big deal of that, and if you could get away with something, he would, and if not, he would abandon it and then go to some new things. I mean, next now he might say that okay, we're gonna withdraw from peace process, we're gonna have some assistance. I don't think that he's gonna fully abandon assistance to Ukraine, but reducing it looks unfortunately realistic. I hope it will not be a dramatic reduction. And then he next day should say that now we're gonna go deal with Yemen or something like that. And yeah, so given that there are lots of hot places in the world, and China will come back, or tariffs, or he can always hijack and redirect media and public focus to other issues. He has this talent. Okay.
He's actually a reality show star.
He is very talented man.
He approaches the world politics like reality show.
Unfortunately, today politics has become an entertaining business. I mean, that's what it is, politics, and that's what Mr. Trump demonstrates us again and again. And he will not admit that he lost this. He will just say that we abandoned. It was not worth it. He will try to make it that it's not his lack of success, but it was that it was not worth of my time, efforts, and so. Problem is that, and you ask me, am I optimistic or not about this deal? It's very hard to make a deal. Okay, in his book of Art of Deal, Trump actually discusses what deal is. And this is, in many ways, starting from a Stone Age. I think deal is a willing agreement of at least two sides, where both sides might lose something or both sides might win something, but both sides are ready to give up something in order to achieve the end result. Now, for Zelensky, it's very hard to imagine what it might be, because it's not that, he said, I will never, in politics you say never today and tomorrow it changes. I mean, we've seen lots of it. It's not about that. Will his own establishment give him a mandate or authority to make a deal without something in return? Like, if let's say he says yes to Trump demands and agrees on, will he be next day president after that? That's a solid question, I think.
Absolutely. So, and then everybody underestimates the pressure that Zelensky is under. I mean,
and I would think that
political pressure.
Zelensky is not Putin, who is a single man state in Russia and who can say whatever he wants and do whatever. Zelensky has to share power, and he has a more or less democratic system in Ukraine. Yes, war democracy, in the war regime, but still, it's a democracy. And I don't think that he cares about that he won't be next day president, but he cares that next day from a guy who literally saved Ukraine from Russian occupation and who will be now remembered as a hero, next day he can be remembered as a traitor because he just gave up it to, and that I think is a principle. I don't think that positioning is important for a political career. He already done it. He achieved impossible. He was actor who became president. He is a textbook. His case will be now in a future books about election campaign. Yeah. Now from Putin's side, what Putin has to gain? Look from his perspective. This economical doom people forecasted did not happen in Russia. He now. Yes, they are in more complicated situation. They had to extend the conscription base. They have now conscription first time started to touch a middle class in Moscow and Petersburg, and that might bite him, but not now. And tomorrow's problem, politicians' understandings are always tomorrow's problem. Putin has achieved lots of things before this war. I think the last thing he wanted to achieve to solidify his place in Russian history, like Peter the Great or something. So that's why Ukraine was about. Now, this goal is not achieved yet, so at least until he gets something, I don't think that he's going to stop. Because if you look from the Russian perspective, I mean, every sanctions possible is already there, almost every sanction possible. Countries in the war anyway, so let's win it if we are there. Yes, it was a mistake, but once we are here, let's finish it in our favor. And many Russians think like that.
Logical, yeah.
So neither of the sides are able to let's say, achieve something out of peace, unless, and that was I was hoping about Trump, unless he would make war for any of the sides a miserable affair. For Zelensky, it's easier to do. You just say them, but it was also possible for Putin. But I don't know why he did not push enough, because Putin did not get that message. First, he said yes, ceasefire, which was fake ceasefire, as we have seen. I mean, this even Easter ceasefire was fake.
Yeah.
There was.
It was a kind of ceasefire, but it was 24 hours.
Yeah. They did not do ground operations, but they bombed it anyway. So, but unless Trump finds a way to make war more expensive for these people than fallout of the miserable peace, which both of them have to sign in their minds, then this war will continue at this stage. I mean, that's what it looks like for the moment. And in my opinion, Trump has this kind of the power, and he pushed Ukraine quite hard, but he has not pushed Russia hard enough. So he needs to do that as well. And that then maybe something we get out of it. Now, Georgia is directly linked with that, because if Ukrainian deal is made, of course there is a big if. We can consider it, I don't want to go to conspiracies and to things, but it's kind of the new Yalta, which that would be a new thing. European Union will be, of course, there to do, because you can't achieve deal without EU. EU's combined assistance to Ukraine more than United States assistance, way more than United States assistance combined. So, in that regard, it will be new, not maybe geographically, but at least structurally maybe as well. There can be some changes, shifts, new world order will be established after this. So where we will end up?
Well, yeah, that's the most important question. Yeah.
I mean, what sides of the Berlin's wall we will be? Yeah, okay. Because for the moment, the government is self-isolating themselves. I mean, Georgia is behaving like she is Switzerland, which we are not. And that, if you translate it in a basic politics, using a basic political dictionary, means that will be Russia's playground. Neutrality in Georgian case means vassal of Russia, because in this geography, in this geopolitics, after Ukraine, you can't honestly be naive enough to believe in your, again, Swiss neutrality was achieved based on a multinational agreement on a number of centuries after number of centuries of the warfare. And that's a very unique case. In any other case, neutrality needs to be respected by every side. In Russian understanding, they don't need you to be neutral. They need for them to be a money laundering touristic place which they can manage at will, which is for the moment. Okay?
Sadly,
yeah. So, that being said, this government continues to push that. To push this, we Georgians need to be Georgia, we don't need. Which means, if anybody understands anything in politics, that we'll pretend that we are independent, but we will be kind of the subservient to Kremlin. I mean, that's how it goes.
Okay, let's move on to the Georgian internal politics, basically, and also what we hear. You said that, the government's line now is that, we Georgians need to be Georgians, the sovereignty, etc. And in that line, I think last week, this week, we hear that, on a scale, on one side, there is visa-free travel, and on the other side, there is independence. Well, this was the statement from one of the Rump Parliament MPs. His name is Rukhadze. I even don't know who he is. But this was the statement that came out of him. It was yesterday, I think. And of course, I mean, there are other statements. I mean, Rukhadze, the Tbilisi mayor, mentioned that, you know, when you are comparing visa-free travel to Georgia's national interests, I think we know what the Georgian people would go for. So, as if a visa-free travel and Georgia's national interests were conflicting each other in some ways. This is an issue that will affect every Georgian citizen, millions of Georgian citizens, exactly in the same way as chicken poop scandal affected everyone, regardless what their political preferences were, right? And this is an important issue, but what we hear from the GD representatives and talking heads, they activated this visa-free suspension issue. What's going on here? Because I believe that this is an issue, it's a heavyweight issue. And if this happens, and if the policy continues as continues now, it eventually will happen. Because if you take a look at what is happening in the region, you know, European Union doesn't have visa-free travel with autocracies, neither with Russia, nor Belarus, Azerbaijan, even Turkey, etc., etc. And I mean, now there is a very serious talk about to make this suspension mechanism kind of to activate it easier in terms that the new rules, if they are adopted, and I expect these to be adopted in October or November, it will grant European Commission right to suspend visa-free on their own without asking the Council. So it will be indeed easier, and also the reasons why it could be suspended. Well, now it is more for technical. If the number of asylum seekers go up or rejectors go up or whatever, in that case, the human rights issue could be a very important issue, and that can be the reason for deactivating visa-free travel. Violation of international law could be, or even worsening the relationship with the European Union could become the reason for suspending visa-free travel. But it's not about Georgia, it's about 61 countries around the world that enjoys visa-free travel to the European Union. So, but again, nobody is talking about this about Georgia in Brussels, in European capitals, but the GD government themselves activated this issue. So what is that, you think?
Well, there we can, it's very hard to guess what GD, I mean, it's still for me it's very hard to explain any urgency or even need at all for 28 November statement of last year when they suspended our integration to European Union. There was no need for that, but they did that, and logically it was a very stupid thing to do, but they did it anyway. So I think we are at this stage, we are in the situation where it becomes increasingly hard to judge GD by logic. I mean, yes, I mean, it might look sarcastical, even comical, but it's not a comedy, it's a tragedy, because country is integration. Let's start from the very beginning. Georgia, by European standards, it's a very poor country. It's in 5 poorest countries in European continent, okay? So, I mean, again, we are not Switzerland or Austria when isolation can, I know, one generation can live off something, banking system or tourism. We don't have such things, okay? None of those incomes enough to make things. One of the biggest income in Georgian case is money sent from EU countries mostly to the families here. And people who went there, they are mostly now working legally because they went there legally because of the visa-free. They find the ways, and some of them are drivers, nurses, childcare, everything. So European Union made it easier for them to get legal because they were traveling legally to European. Now, if legal travel is out of the question, then legal employment is out of the question as well. Absolutely all. So these people will, in some cases, they will have a dramatically worse working conditions there because they can't be employed legally anymore. And in many cases, they could be asked to leave because, I mean, if visa-free is suspended. And for GD, it will be a huge disappointment to, instead of receiving money every month, to receive angry citizens back to Georgia. So, hence the question, why? I think what you said, it's well known by GD that there are two mechanisms for the moment to restrict visa travel. One of them is political and unlikely that that might happen. I mean, there are some countries who would not vote for that. Second is an internal affairs committee, but it is meeting in December. And again, there is also, they don't need a majority, but it's a complicated process. However, they know about that as well, that commission now will wield more power. And if this decision is made and Brussels structuring of the Brussels changed and commission now with this new European government, with Kubilius and with Kallas and all this stuff, I think Georgia is a highly likelihood that they will use this against Georgian Dream government. So they know that. So they try to prepare now because it's one of the hardest campaign they ever do. Because anything else they did, even European integration thing, these were all conceptual things. Okay, let me put it.
That's the practical thing.
Yeah.
You know,
this is a tangible, practical thing. And it will be very hard to sell. For students, for youngsters who use that, I mean, you can buy now cheap tickets for 50 or even less euros and go to Milan or somewhere. I mean, that will be all suspended. However, biggest problem of GD is here that whatever they do now, they are preaching to wrong audience, because biggest frustration will be not among Georgians who are now in Georgia, but Georgians who will be forced to return and abandon their employment in Poland, in Greece, in Italy, in Portugal, etc. So those people will be a very strong supporters of a change in Georgia. And arguably, one of the reasons why Georgian Dream still manages to stay, because these people are outside of the country, and opposition and general this protest lacks fuel numbers, let's put it this way, because many of us who were active, energetic, and let's say able, they left and settled for something else. So now, if these people are back, of course it's if, but it's likely if they are back, then Georgian Dream gets like 100 or 200,000 more angry citizens here. It's a game changer in Georgia.
It is, and this is what they are preparing ground for, I believe. So I mean, because I mean, look, they also are trying to introduce new normal, in the way that they still have time. They realize, and they have this propaganda machine that works very well. So, and they are playing blame game, and also try to associate like the Visafree European Union, etc., and Georgian traditions, Christianity, etc., peace, as if these two things conflict each other. And then probably at the end of the game, they want citizens to choose what they would rather have, visa-free travel or bombs falling on their heads. Of course, this is bullshit, excuse my French, but yeah, I mean, a lot of crap that Georgian Dream supporters already believe in.
Well, they are doing very good job portraying as a party agenda as a country's national interest, okay? I mean, one thing what Georgian Dream wants, and second thing what Georgia as a nation, as a country wants. So they managed so far, in some cases, successfully sell their party agenda as a national agenda. Okay, it's not either visa-free regime or Georgia's national interest, but it's either visa-free regime or Georgian Dream's interest. Now that's the big difference. When somebody attacks Georgian Dream, they say that they attack Georgia. They don't say they attack Georgian Dream.
This
so
is what they do.
They make Georgian Dream represent Georgia in a full understanding of this world, which of course, what very often autocracies do, very often dictators do when they personify themselves with the nation. It's a very old trick, but working one, as we can see, because if you look at latest statistics, I think there was a second leg of the Georgia-Armenia qualification match in Tbilisi. The first one we won, and then second we also won. After winning the first match 3-0 aggregate in Armenia, it was all well known how it will end. Despite that, there were more people on stadium than there were on protest on Rustaveli. That shows two things, that Georgian opposition is not doing its best. I don't want now to go to critics of the people. It's wrong time, wrong place. I think we have more problems to do. But it has to be noticed that they need to do better, and we need to be honest about it with them. And second, of course, the biggest thing that Georgian Dream managed somehow to convince most of the people that it's in their best interest to not be on the Rustaveli Street. So, until this situation continues, yes, Rustaveli Street houses a few thousand people every day, and sometimes even tens of thousands, but it's not enough. I remember first demonstration when they talked about Russian law in the summer. You could not find place starting from the Square of the Heroes up to the Freedom Square. There were so many. That was impressive. But even that is not enough. I mean, a good question for you you are a very good political analyst. I mean, you worked a number of the media sources. Look, he's not Shevardnadze, okay? Just standing on the street will not be enough. So, where we go from there, okay? That's the question. I mean, do we start blocking streets, or do we go further and we start blocking buildings as well? For example, the Georgian Dream Party building. Do we start boycotting? Do we call for mass strike? Because without those kind of things, I mean, you don't need to go take Solidarność in Poland, how they did, mass strikes, boycotts. Just standing in the street was enough for Shevardnadze, who I have great respect to him despite his late period mistakes, because he was old. The guy has seen all of it, and he was less interested. He was tired, he wanted to go, and Bidzina thinks that he owns the country.
Yeah, absolutely legitimate questions, and I think this is the questions that should be answered from the opposition side and also the people who are out in the streets and activists. Yeah, national resistance is the answer, but what forms it will take, well, that's another issue.
They will in details here, and they are important.
The visa-free issue could be part of it, because look, when it is suspended, because I would say not if, but when it is suspended, if this continues like that, it will be suspended, then we will get hundreds of thousands of extra angry people, right? And this is whose minds the GD is trying to control now to prepare ground for this. Let's move on a little bit on something else. The grant law, which is already adopted. The most important thing is that, from now onwards, the Georgian organizations, like not you and me and the others, we probably would not be able to get international grant from the international donor without the green light from GD grant agency, which was already established, and the chair was appointed. We had Russian Law 1, then had the Russian Law 2, what that they call FARA, the tougher version of it. Most likely, none of them start working because the majority of the organizations basically didn't get registered, etc. So, and now we have the Russian Law 3, which is way more direct. And do you think that it will work? Because, my experience is this. When you have the closed door, you are looking for another door to go. If all doors are closed, then you're looking at the window to climb in. If windows are closed, then you try to break the window in, or if it is sealed, then you try to dig a tunnel. So, what do you think about this law? Will that work?
First of all, this third edition of the law just demonstrates that those of us who was saying that the first law was just a camel's nose in the tent, that's what happened. That was the reality. Many of us said that, and we had it on our Facebook and our YouTube when we ask some of our Russian colleagues to say it was just the beginning and it would get tougher and tougher, which it did. Now, human creativity has lots of forms, and one might say that it has no limit. So I don't think that you can restrict so easily something. People will start finding new ways how to cut corners. And in this case, these are legitimately cuttable corners and you need to cut them. So yeah, why not? I mean, people will start now. And the problem here is that we don't need to ask permission to receive grants. Grant issuer needs to ask permission, to which they make like...
Yes, but also you will be penalized if you get the grant without permission.
There will be other ways. People will start to make
you pay twice as much of the grant.
We already are discussing it among ourselves. I don't want to talk details. I don't want to give any tips to Georgian Dream in a case of somebody of them would listen to this. But there are ways how to. Problem is that it made things way more complicated, of course. It made things more hard, and life more miserable for many organizations. And so not everybody will be able to survive it, let's be honest about it, and that's a pity. But there are ways around it, again, not pleasant ones. I'm not calling to openly to break the law, but this is a stupid law. And this is a law which serves against Georgian interest, which establishes a pathway to dictatorship, and I don't think that we need to obey it. So, yes, my answer is there are ways. And this is like a loser's game. When Georgian Dream tries to make it more complicated and we come up with new solutions, they add a new thing, we come up with new solutions. It is what it is. Unfortunately, we are in the stage where instead of developing country and putting our agendas forward like social agendas and education, healthcare, Georgian Dream now is dealing with the deep state and NGOs. These are two problems of the Georgian Dream.
Okay, so will that scare international donors, you think?
Yes, some of them yes, some of them no. It depends. Some donors are very principled in things and they will not be scared by that. They will try to find some solutions and there are some solutions, they will agree to implement those things. Some of the donors, they will not be scared, they will just plainly refuse to work under these conditions, so they will start shutting down this project. So, yeah. There will be some damage done. It already done. There is no doubt about it.
Thank you. And one more issue, I think, which I think less attention was given to that in the Georgian media, that this Georgian Dream reshuffle. What we saw was that the head of Achara Autonomous Republic was replaced, where he even didn't know that it was going to happen, and then he was made to post his resignation on Facebook.
Serves him right.
But I think the more important reshuffle was when Mr. Lukashenko, who was head of the Georgia State Security Service and one of the closest allies to Mr. Ivanishvili, and probably his man, he would say, was replaced by Andriy Okhanashvili, who is considered to be Kobakidze's man.
Yep.
But also, the drama unfolded when Lukashenko was supposed to be appointed as a minister for regional or something development. That was invented for him, this ministerial position, and then suddenly somebody changed his mind. Was it Bidzina? Was it Kobakidze himself? I don't know. But what is happening, Nodar? So what is it like? Bidzina is retiring, is getting old and lazy, or maybe Kobakidze is kind of a new player right there. So what is your take on this?
First of all, factual, then second, you are asking...
Why are they doing it?
Now you are asking to speculate. Of course it does matter, but first of all, factual. Factual thing is that first time since GD government 2012, that head of the secret police, political police, and that's what Susi is. This is not security service, political police. Head of the political police is appointed by prime minister. Always, whoever prime minister was, loyal Garibashvili, questionable Quirikashvili, or disloyal Gakharia, whoever was the prime minister, head of the political police was always anyway appointed by Bidzina. It was Gomelauri before, he's a private security guy, then it was Lilwashvili, close friend to his family, so it was always somebody. First time in GD's history when political police guy, as you mentioned, is a prime minister's candidate, not a premier's, not a Bidzina's candidate. So it never happened before. So this is the fact. Now, conclusion. There are two possible explanations of that. One of that Kobakidze managed to somehow replace Bidzina step by step, or Bidzina let him replace him. And this is now Kobakidze's time, and his rule is now comes in a full authority without any puppets, and then without any directions from Bidzina's perspective. He becomes prime minister in his own right, Mr. Kobakidze. Questionable theory. I don't think that Bidzina, a shrewd businessman who thinks that he owns the country, would give it away. But this is the theory which has to be on the table. Second theory is that scapegoat theory, second theory. That Bidzina plans to settle with Europeans, with Americans. He will take significant step back, retract his laws, things like that. He wants to return back to the 2021 situation with Europe. And for that, he needs somebody to blame, and said that, okay, from tomorrow I'll fire all of them, and now let's negotiate with me. And he tries now this, as I was told that now he tries to play this card in Washington very heavily. More likely than first scenario. Okay, I would more likely believe in Bidzina actor than a Bidzina pensioner, which is very unlikely from the perspective. So these are the two theories. Either the third theory would be that Kobakidze genuinely overpowered him, which would be a bit silly idea because Kobakidze has no power. Bidzina still owns lots of things. So it's a maybe mix of first and the second. Maybe Bidzina wants to genuinely get rid of everything and start first, but he can't control everything, so he has to give some things. But whatever it is, now, again, let's go back to facts. Now it's a fact that other than one vice prime minister who is now in America, Minister of Economy,
Okay.
everybody else now with portfolio is Kobakidze's appointees. Yeah. So, I don't know where will we have an age of Kobakidze now in Georgia.
Interesting.
Yeah, the only question here is that, we had a Garibashvili, who was a funny guy, but we had a Quirikashvili who kind of trying to, when you look now from today's perspective,
It was a kind of decent, at least
He was a
looked
decent-
like a decent prime minister.
he looked like a decent prime minister. We had a Gakharia who was like this gangsterish guy, but he was a good manager. I
Top
suppose.
manager.
Top manager. He was. Then he had Garibashvili again. Who was. Now it looks like that, it's like kids now who are driving school bus. Somehow they got rid of driver, and now kids got in the helm of the school bus, and it's very shaky now.
Right. I think that could be, but as you started talking about kids, before I let you go, I need to ask you this. I mean, the most amusing story that I've heard, that the Chinese is coming as a second language in our schools. What's that, you think? Do you think that that's a job center for Mangrelians?
Yes.
To start,
yes, I think it's a job center for a second degree relatives, because first degree relatives already got the jobs, and will be there. Of course, they will try to introduce schools in one or two, Chinese in one or two schools. I'm all open for that. I think that Chinese is one of the oldest languages of the world. China is a cradle of the many human perks of many civilizations. And I think that we have to know that, and I would support my own kids learning it. Now, you can't make it mandatory, of course, because it's a foreign language, but
second language. Okay.
Yes, after English, they will. But of course, it's a show off. It's a when patient has a very high temperature, some of his limbs start to get out of control and start making some strange movements. I think that's what it is. Although again, I'm more than welcome introduction of the Chinese language. At least more than 1 billion people speak that language. And again, this is one of the oldest cultures of the earth. So yeah, why not? But that has nothing to do with this decision. This is some insanity parody of the government which we have, which on the one hand talks about deep states and fight with that, and then on the other hand that tries to introduce, this is a result of very long stay in power of the single-minded, very rich but very scared man. I mean, that's where we are today. I mean,
that's a sign of Kobakidze's era.
Yes,
right? Kind of
and I don't want to finish this your first broadcast with the pessimism. So, as we're recording it in the first quarter or the second quarter of 2025, I can tell you very openly that in a 6 months period, there are all signs that everything what is happening now will be worse. Economical situation will be worse. There will be more repressions. There will be more arrests. There will be more political pressure. There will be more pressure on media, on NGOs. There will be more linked to Russians, less freedoms, less things. So I think that we have good times now.
But things need to get worse before they start getting better.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Nodar, and thank you, everybody, that you were watching and listening to us. Like us, subscribe to us, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you.